Hello and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard and their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective, confident leadership. I'm Juliet Corbett. I'm an executive coach and strategist, and I work one-to-one with senior leaders, guiding them to find their strategic focus, empower their teams, and regain control over their time.
And I'm Lucy Gower. I'm a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I empower leaders to build their happy, confident and high-performing teams. Today we're going to talk about AI, connection and uncertainty. And while we were preparing for this session, Juliet and I were both saying, why haven't we talked about AI already? And we didn't feel like we knew enough about it maybe to be able to think about how to use it in a leadership context. But over to you, Juliet, because I see you as the person that quietly does loads of testing about AI and then kind of comes back and says, well, this is what's working. So I want to pick your brains a bit in this one, if I'm really honest.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. So I got absolutely fascinated by AI. I think it was around the launch of ChatGPT. It was one of the not one of the first, but one of the first in my little network to really get onto it and see the power of it. And I've done a lot of reading, a lot of research, kept up to date, used a lot of resources and podcasts to keep up to date with what's happening. And I think the reason I've kept quiet on this podcast has been, I've not been really sure what my voice or perhaps our voice can add to the conversation. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff out there around AI. And I think the sudden thing that slotted into place as to why we have to talk about it now, and this episode is kind of center on it, is, Lucy, when you said it's not just AI in isolation, it's how it connects to being human and having that connection with other humans that you're working with. Yeah. And also how it connects to uncertainty and the discomfort that comes with uncertainty. And all of a sudden, then I could say, that's the angle. That's how we add something to the conversation. Because if we're thinking about the future of leadership, I think AI, connection, uncertainty are three of the massive trends that we need to get really good at handling if we're going to be really effective leaders over the coming 5-10 years and more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with all the things that we've talked about over the episodes that we've done, thinking about what skills leaders need to have, the approach, the attitudes that leaders need to have for the future in a quickly changing world of work is really key. And I guess for me, it's around, as a leader, how do we ensure that we personally are using AI and encouraging that within our teams? It's less about structure and process, but more about how are you using it as an aid to your excellent leadership?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, we've got to be cognizant of the confidentiality and ethical side of it. We might not go into all of the technical details on this, but leaders need to know that anything they're putting into AI is appropriate. And so you'll need to be careful about what policies you've got internally as to what information is shared. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're going to be really risk averse and cautious, you shouldn't be putting any details about individuals, any details that are confidential that you wouldn't be happy to just splash all over the newspapers or the social media. And even being really cautious in that way, we can then use it for a lot of things that we do as leaders. But I come across a lot of people that aren't using it very much. So even if we say we're not going to be talking here about big corporate scale AI projects, because those will need to go through a very detailed process around thinking about compliance and confidentiality and so on. But even just as an individual leader using Gemini or ChatGPT, assuming we're not sharing anything confidential or personal, there are actually loads of use cases as a leader that we can use it for. Yeah. Lucy, I wonder whether to begin with, obviously you and I, we're both leaders, but we're leaders in a different way with our own business. I wonder whether we start with what we're using it for, and then also what we think a leader who's leading a larger team embedded in an organization, and we know those people because those are our clients, what they're using it for separately. So how do you use AI? What have you found to be most useful?
So broadly speaking, I use it as a way to speed up some of the work that I'm doing. I was about to say admin then, it's not just admin work. I use it a lot for writing. I will I'll write a blog, or I will take the transcript from this podcast, and I will ask for a blog that pulls out some of the key points, or a LinkedIn
Mhm.
post. But I'll always go back and edit it, and we go backwards and forwards a few times. So I suppose I use it as an editor. I have
Yeah.
used it for a very angry letter I once wrote in complaint, and asked it to make it more friendly and personable, so the person reading it would take it in the intention that it was meant to be helpful, not angry of Devon. And it did an amazing job, actually, and that opened up my kind of thinking to how it can enhance what I am doing and my thinking, not instead of. It's the combination of both of those things that I
Mhm.
think is important. And the other way that I use it might be as a kind of starting point or a jumping off point for thinking. Give me some different opinions. I think this about this topic. Give me some different opinions. Um, so I think that those are the three core ways that I'm using it in my business. How about you?
Yeah, pretty similar. So I love that you called it editor rather than writer, because
Yes.
when I first started experimenting with it, and I got kind of sucked into the idea that this can do the writing for me, and
Yeah.
it really can't.
No,
It's
agree.
never going to sound like me. And to be honest, if I want to put enough time in to make it sound like me, I may as well have just written it myself,
Yeah.
basically. So I use it now exactly as you said. I can give it a transcript from a podcast episode or something similar that's non-confidential, and I
Yeah.
can ask it to do first draft of episode notes, email, LinkedIn. I will then delete a fair amount of it and say, no, I
Yeah.
don't want that, doesn't sound like me. I don't want to do this, don't want to do that. But I'll use it to create like a first draft of something.
Yeah.
And sometimes it creates a first draft and it says something that I think, well, that's really stupid. Like maybe it's not
Yeah.
actually stupid, maybe it's just my opinion is just that's wrong. And then that makes me realize, okay, maybe I disagree with what other people are saying on this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a unique point of view. That's what I want to dive into.
Yeah.
So when it gets me wrong, in inverted commas, often it opens up an interesting train of thought for me as to why do I disagree with that?
Yeah.
And how can I put my point of view across really strongly so that if the internet generally believes one thing and I believe something else, I don't know about strategy or whatever it might be,
Mm.
that's really interesting to me because it sparks the thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the idea of removing emotion, which was your second example. I haven't actually really done it for that. That's really interesting. But I wonder whether, as well, it's about helping it to reframe the tone of something.
Yes.
I do sometimes have a tendency when I go into really detailed writing, I tend to sound like a textbook. I think my Oxford Cambridge training comes through. I sound like I'm writing a textbook. And so I can then give it my first draft, which basically sounds like a textbook, and say, can you make this sound more human? And then it'll come up sounding like another human, not me,
Yeah.
but I can make it sound more like me in the next draft. So there's something about tone
Yeah,
and emotion in
definitely.
there as well. Um, and then the other thing that I love, you mentioned thinking. I love using it as a thinking partner. It's got to
Oh,
know me
me
quite
too.
well. It knows about the kind of things I write about. So
Yeah.
I can say things like, because it's I do a final proof read of all of my emails
Yeah.
that go, not one-to-one emails, but my emails that go out to my list once or twice a week. Even if I've written it myself, it will always go in there for the final proofread. And it'll
Yeah.
often come up with one or two interesting points that I can change. But because it's got that history of me, I can say things like, what have I not talked about in my emails for a while? And
Yeah.
it'll come up with 5 to 10 things. Like, oh yeah, there's a couple in there. I
Yeah.
talked about that a year ago. I haven't talked about that recently. That feels important. Or I'll ask it, what is in my. So I'm starting to draft a bit of a book outline at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
What have we talked about in the Quiet Leadership Revolution podcast that I haven't got in the book? And it'll
Mm.
do that compare and contrast. And I'll be like, okay, all of these things, that's interesting, it's correct, but actually I don't want to talk about those in the book. Those aren't relevant. But there'll be a couple of gems in there of, oh yeah, I could tell that story. Or
Yeah.
Lucy and I were really interested when we did that episode. I want to re-listen to that
Yeah.
episode because that goes into that chapter. So it's spotting gaps in my thinking
Yeah.
and then challenging me to be ever better, I
Yeah.
think.
I love that. And also, I think there's a real difference. Like, it knows you. And I suspect that you said, here's my ideal client. This is the things that are important.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You've given it some
Yeah.
prompts that are relevant to you. Yet it isn't a mini me. You're asking it for challenge, which I think is really interesting. And on that, I think there's something around is your partner in delivering your words, not like human copy, not academic
Yeah,
sounding copy for your
yeah,
audience. It's your
yeah,
partner in thinking. I love the term thinking partner. And it's
yeah,
not like it's not always right. It's a tool to work with. And I think that where I see potential risk or danger, thinking about ourselves and about our clients that we work with, if you take, well, chat gpt said it, so it has to be right. Chat
yeah. You
gpt
can't
said it,
do
so
that.
let us use our own brains to have a think about whether
Yeah.
that is relevant or not. And my example would be when I was at school doing maths and we were allowed calculators in our maths exam. But I remember our teacher always saying, yeah, it's the workings out that matter. And you won't have a calculator in your pocket when you're an adult. You need to be able to, um, if you're splitting, you've gone out for dinner with friends and you're splitting it 5 ways, you need to know broadly how much that's going to be. It's all very well if you do now have a calculator in our pocket, because we all do. Thank you, Mr.
Mhm.
Brand. You were incorrect on that one, although that's probably the only thing you were ever incorrect about. Um, but you can still put the wrong numbers in and have no idea that you're paying completely
Yeah,
the wrong bill amount. So there's something around, yeah, it's a cognitive partner, but it's not plug it in and you get the right answer. It
yeah,
it can shortcut answers and it can help you think in a different way, but it doesn't replace you as a human being.
yeah. It's about how the judgment, isn't it? Actually, there are other school subjects that probably come into play here. I remember when history, always find out where the information comes from. Think about where your source,
Yeah,
what bias does your source have?
yeah, yeah.
And again, you've got to use your judgment. Actually, AI is pretty rubbish at doing maths,
And
generally
it's
speaking.
has bias
Um,
built into it.
but it has a lot of bias
Yeah,
built in. I consistently pick it up and attempt to retrain it. Obviously, I'm not having any impact as one individual. It does occasionally assume that a CEO is male, and every time it does that, I pick it up and say, no, um, this CEO is not male. Why have you assumed this CEO is male? This is not the case, which is fascinating. And of course, it's very apologetic.
yeah.
And my chat GPT is way too nice to me. Like, I need to go back into the settings and tell it, you need to up the amount of challenge. The number of times it comes back to me, and I'll have pointed out that it's wrong about something. You've assumed this CEO is male. Why? And it'll come back to me, of course you're right. Of course you're right. Blah, blah, blah. Like, stop making excuses. It's really annoying. But it's a thinking partner. So you can't outsource the thinking. You have to keep your own judgment
Yeah,
involved. And I think this is one of the learning journeys that I've gone on with it. Not only did I used to think, oh, I can do all my writing for me, and it clearly couldn't, but also there was a point at which I thought, if I give it enough information, it will be able to give me new ideas. And it's never been able to do that. It can give me
yeah,
seeds of ideas that I can then use my judgment to think about, of these 20 ideas, which handful do I want to pursue? And then I need to do the thinking to develop it. And there is a risk, and there's some commentators out there talking about this. There's a risk that by asking the AI to do too much of our thinking for us, it degrades our own thinking
agree.
ability. Um, and so it's just another voice around the
I
table.
agree. I completely agree. And it makes absolute sense when if I think about creativity and how we solve problems and how our brains are making different neural connections. If we reduce the amount of neural connections, we're reducing the amount of brain
Mm.
activity, and anything that you don't use, it's like a muscle, isn't it? And it becomes less useful.
Yeah,
If anyone is like a
yeah.
neuroscience listening to this, I really apologize for my very basic kind of analysis there, but I've done quite a lot of reading on this, and this does seem to be the case. If you stop using the particular set of skills or brain functions,
Yeah,
then you need to practice to keep it
yeah.
going.
Absolutely. And it's one of those scientific truths that feels true as well. We know, if we don't ride a bike for 50 years and we get back on a bike, however good we were as a kid, we're going to need to relearn
Yeah,
to ride the
and you can
bike. And
still do it again.
let's,
Like,
yeah,
it's not, you can relearn it, but
yeah,
you're not your 10-year-old self getting on the bike again and off you go,
yeah,
fearless. You need to
exactly.
kind of, you're a bit rusty.
Yeah. So I wonder whether it's useful to think about what use cases we thought about with our clients, obviously keeping everything very confidential, but what kind of things do our
Yeah.
clients use AI for that we've found have had an impact for them?
I think that I am seeing it being used for same as we just talked about,
Mm,
writing copy, marketing, marketing copy, any external or internal facing copy. I'm seeing it being used for data analysis. What are our customers doing?
mhm,
What are any trends or patterns? I'm seeing it used as kind of like a personal assistant, like here's my diary, here's what my productivity looks like, help me plan my time. And I need to say this now, otherwise I will forget. I'm not seeing any of my clients using it for this, but there's some research, quite a lot of research that shows the biggest use of AI in the, I think it's in the workplace, is around companionship and almost
mm,
therapy. And
mhm,
there's something there for me, which maybe we can come back round to around why is that? Like my chat GPT is extremely supportive, and I can understand how somebody would like feel very supported by their AI companion, but to
yeah,
use it for that support specifically makes me wonder, well, where's the human connection? Why isn't that coming from anywhere
yeah.
else? But I appreciate I've gone off on a tangent. I'm going to come back to where
Oh,
your clients are using it, if we can talk about
yeah.
that.
Let's definitely note that to come back to in a few minutes because there's also some interesting ideas around using it to coach as well, which I think are
Mm,
really interesting, and pros and cons of where it can actually be really strong, and where it can fall down as well.
great.
But in terms of my clients, I think there are a couple of instances that I can think of where I have been working with a client, and in this one example, 5 minutes before the end of a coaching call, she mentioned, "Oh yes, and I need to do this other thing." And the other thing was something to do. She worked in a school. It was something to do with creating a new uniform. Basically, she had a year to lead the whole school through creating a new uniform. She just dropped into the conversation. I'm feeling completely overwhelmed by this. I've got no idea where to start. I've got all these different stakeholders are going to be really, some of them really supportive, some of them really angry. Like, I don't know what to do.
Oh,
We had 5 minutes. So basically, what I said was like, we're going to talk in a month. So we can absolutely talk about it then. But in the meantime, why don't you just share with ChatGPT? And she hadn't used it before, so she hadn't trained it on who she was, and just see what it comes up with. Say, give a basic description of your school. You don't need to give any names of schools. Give it a really general sense of what would my first step be.
yeah.
And she came back to me on the next call and said, we don't need to talk about that because I've got everything I need from ChatGPT,
Oh my
which
goodness.
actually was really good because it meant that we can talk about deeper, more kind of meaningful elements in
Yeah,
coaching. But that simple back and forth conversation that she'd had with that, large language model through a chat method, and that
yeah,
could have been Gemini, it could have been Claude, it happened to have been ChatGPT,
yeah.
gave her what she needed. And that alongside my second instruction, which was once you've got a good enough sense of where you're heading, who can you delegate to? This isn't
Mm,
a how can I do this? This is a who question, not a how question.
mm.
And she came back to me next time and said, look, I found the perfect person who's really excited about taking this on. They really love using AI as well. So I've given them permission, without sharing any details, continue to use ChatGPT as your planning partner. They'd solved it completely. And they're midway through that project and it's going really well.
I
So
love that
I
example.
think in that case, it was a great example of making sure that as a coach, I don't need to be spending my time doing quite surface level things. Because actually the chat GPT was really good at that.
So there's something really interesting in there around what are the things that AI can do effectively, efficiency with some guardrails in place
Mhm.
in order to free us up as leaders to spend more time doing the deeper thinking, the more emotional connection work. So there's two
Yeah.
ways of looking at that for you. It's like, oh, I'm out of a job because ChatGPT has done my coaching call for an hour. But you didn't say that. You said, and that was great because then we could dive into something that was deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right that there's the effective use of the AI tools to do some of the surface level
Yeah,
things in order to then allow leaders and their teams
yeah,
or leaders and their coaches, in my case,
yeah,
to actually spend their one-to-one connection time doing something that only humans can do,
yeah.
at least for now.
And Well, yeah, who knows what's going to happen in the future? And
Yeah,
I think that as leaders, I would imagine that many people who work for organizations that employ people, there are going to be roles that can be replaced by AI. How are you using the humans to do something that only right now, I believe anyway, only humans can do, that human connection, that whether it's like customer service, whether it's accelerating other projects that are coming up. Um, but I kind of want to say out loud, some jobs will get lost and new jobs will be created, and being
yeah,
flexible, being open and honest that is perhaps what the future is going to bring, and being flexible to what you do with that, I think is maybe the core.
yeah. I think this is really important actually. So I think that there is a certain amount of scaremongering and fear that gets generated when we read headlines like I think it was the CEO of Anthropic mentioned over the summer that he thought that 50% of white collar jobs would be gone in 5 years.
Yeah.
Other people saying that the launch of ChatGPT 5, I think it was Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the launch of ChatGPT 5 is synonymous with testing of the atomic bomb. It's going to have that much impact on society. I actually, for various reasons that we don't need to get into now, I think that there's a lot of hype. A lot of these quotes come from the companies that need to
Mm-hmm.
generate a lot of investment in AI. So they are making the case for why people should be investing in this amazing technology. We've seen a slowdown actually in the development of large language model technology during 2025 as we're coming to the end of that year. This year has not produced some of the predicted, anticipated breakthroughs. And interestingly, people are becoming non-specialists, are starting to understand what the specialists, the technologists have always known, which is that large language models, of which GPT, Gemini, Claude, etc., are examples, are just one type of AI. And a lot of the other forms of AI that need to accelerate at pace to actually generate significant social upheaval and like really massive job loss, they're not accelerating at the same pace that we've seen the large language models accelerate in the last couple of years. So I think there's a combination of some slowing down, potentially a market correction in terms of where share prices are in AI at the
Mm-hmm.
moment. I think things are overvalued, there's a bit of hype around. But actually, I don't think that people should be I don't think leaders should be overly worried that we're going to be going through leading to lead massive redundancy programs because of AI. I don't think the workers should be overly worried that their role, their job is going to completely disappear overnight. I think that all this is fear mongering. I think the truth is it will happen at a much slower pace than everyone's predicting, but it will happen.
Yes, I agree it will happen.
But it's just a sense that we always need to be retraining, relearning, growth mindset, evolving with our economy and what it needs. And that in that journey, there might be an increase of pace, but I don't think it's an Armageddon sudden cliff edge that we're approaching. I think
Well,
it needs urgent action, but not fear.
mm, well, the 50% of white collar worker jobs will be obsolete, whatever it's
Hmm.
a lovely clickbait headline, isn't it? And I
Exactly.
think that perhaps at this point, like, AI is being talked about as the biggest change to how we work since the Industrial Revolution, and then maybe the invention of the internet. Like, it's definitely creating massive changes for how we work, how we consume, like, for all of
Mm.
us. And the pace of change has been faster than any other pace of change so far. Perhaps it's slowing down,
Hmm.
perhaps it's leveling out, perhaps there's a market correction, all of those things. But I think, um, the only thing that is certain is that we are constantly changing, and that change is speeding up. So I agree. I think I agree with you. There's a nuance there that I think it is coming quicker maybe than I get from how you're
Mm.
talking about it. But hey, who knows? None of us can predict the future. But what I do
Exactly.
agree with you about is that the things that make us human and how we are able to respond to that and respond from a place of seeing opportunities rather than seeing fear is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say I think the pace of change is faster than we've ever seen. It was actually surprisingly slow, the impact of the internet from when it was
Yes,
created through to when it actually
because
impacted how we
no one thought it
worked.
was a good idea, and it was just used
No.
for sharing documents, and no
Yeah,
one saw the bigger
exactly.
picture for years.
So the technologists saw what was about to happen, but it didn't actually happen at the speed that they thought it would happen at. Because, and I think the mitigating, the kind of the slowing factor in that adoption is that technologists are often early adopters of technology because they're wired
Yeah.
that way. So if you're in AI, obviously you're going to be really kind of excited because you're going to know everything that's happening and quite curious and growth mindset and adopting this technology quite early. Most companies and most people are relatively slow to adopt change. And so I think there's an advantage here that I think it will be slower than some people are saying, but possibly faster than we've ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Given that some people it's going to saying it's going to happen next year, it could be both things that true at once. It could be faster than we've ever noticed it
Yeah,
before
yeah, yeah.
and not as fast as some people are saying. But the advantage here for leaders, for anyone within companies, but and for brands and companies themselves is the first mover advantage or the early mover advantage. If you're using AI now and keeping yourself up to date with it and giving yourself and your team time to keep getting training and staying up to date with what AI can do, you're going to be one of the ones that's able to push ahead faster than the rest of the curve, which gives you advantages around efficiency and advantages around scale that you can offer an impact on the world. And I think all of those things are the things to be focusing on rather than, oh my goodness, I need to train to do this thing called AI, which I'm a little bit scared of because otherwise I'm going to lose my job within a couple of years. Like no one really acts brilliantly from a place of fear. Let's encourage people to act from a place of curiosity and growth rather than fear of job loss.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and thinking about AI, maybe you've put off using it. I guess there's something about speaking to some of the things that we've talked about in other episodes about, well, what's the opportunity? How can you be curious? What can you test and learn? How might you be able to enjoy experimenting with what it can help you with in the context that you're working in? And encourage the use of it with some boundaries. But I definitely have seen organisations that have taken this approach and said, well, we don't quite understand how it can work, but there's a policy in place and an encouragement for people to experiment and play, like using that word in their encouragement, play with using it so that you can understand where it's going to have benefits for not just how we work together, but the impact that we can make as an organisation.
Yeah. So I think what you've said there has a lovely linear step-by-step process. It's create really strong boundaries that everyone agrees and understands. And yes, the word policy makes absolute sense, but it's not the kind of policy that's going to sit dusty on the shelf or a PDF on the web intranet somewhere. It's actually something that everyone understands and maybe even has had a role in co-creating. So there's really clear, we will not risk XYZ. That is not what we're prepared to do. But then once you've set those boundaries, really play. And anyone who's playing, it's almost like going back to childhood. You know, we play to figure out how gravity works. We play to figure out how language works. And now we need to play to understand how AI works. And it's only in playing that we really get to grips with it ourselves.
So permission to play.
Exactly. I'd love to loop back to that comment you made earlier around companionship. And I think that brings us on to our second topic in this episode. So AI is really important. We've talked about how it can be used in the future of leadership and use of AI. But actually, what's also really important in the future of leadership is continuing to have connection and being human for our team, showing human leadership, vulnerability as appropriate, understanding that change isn't easy for everybody, connecting with people one-to-one and in groups. I suppose the first question I'm going to throw back at you, Lucy, is why do we think connection, human connection, is going to be so important for the future of leadership? Why have we elevated it to be in this episode?
For me, it always is the crux of team working, human connection, trust, accountability, and I'm finding it massively interesting that people are using AI for connection, companionship above other human beings. So that takes my brain to what's missing in how we're currently, let's just keep it to like a work context. What's missing in our working context that means that AI has become such a valuable tool for so many around connection. And my personal view is that because we're working remote or flexibly and have done for so long, there's some connection that's been lost. There was some research by Deloitte, and I'll dig it out to put it in the show notes, around how 5 or so years ago, when the pandemic first met and everyone was able to work remotely and work from home, and it was quite novel, and we patted ourselves on the back by thank goodness we're able to do that. And it didn't work brilliantly for everybody, but broadly speaking, like, commerce could continue. And then 5 years or more later, it is not working so well for many organizations, and according to this research, because people have moved roles, people have moved jobs, and that kind of baseline relationship, trust, knowing your colleagues doesn't exist in the same way anymore, because we've got to know our colleagues mostly through a screen or one day a week when we're in the office. And that connection of, you see the same person in the morning when you're making a cup of tea, and the chat you have on your way to the meeting, all of those things about being in the same locality as other human beings has gone, and that fundamental connection of seeing people face to face has been lost. I'm not saying that we all have to go back in an office 9 to 5, but as leaders, I think we have to be really deliberate and intentional about how we are ensuring that our employees, our teams, have the opportunity to connect on a human level for our own mental health, and also for our productivity and our business being successful. That's my theory.
I think it's more than just a theory. I think it's really true. I think what came to mind immediately for me was actually connecting it back to that AI idea, that there's a way of looking at all forms of technology, actually, not just AI, but also social media and so on, that what these technologies do is they replace for us a basic human need. And in replacing that human need with something that's technology driven, they stop us from having the urge to go out and seek it elsewhere. Yeah. So, for example, social media, you could argue, replaces the sense that I need to find my community of people who are like me. Yeah. Of course, it's really important we listen to voices who are not like us, but even so, we need to find a community where I feel like I found people like me. If I'm doing that on social media effectively, I don't find the need to head out in the evening and go to my local village pub quiz, because I found my people, they're all online. But what that means is I then don't have the drive, the urge to go and seek human connection with humans that actually live next door to me, which then, of course, weakens the local community and the networks and the strength of those networks. And that's what's happening here, I think, isn't it? Is the fact that sense of connection can be replaced through technology. And so we're not getting the urge to go out and find the people.
And it's a sense of connection. It's not, is it, or is it not, true connection with another human being? So it's the same as,
agreed.
I'm going to say an analogy now, and as I'm saying it out loud, I'm not sure if it's a very good one or not, but you can be the judge of that. It's like, it's the difference between having a strawberry flavored thing and eating a real strawberry.
Yes.
Other fruits available.
Which is another parallel into our ultra processed food environment in which we also live. Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's the deep humanness of making direct eye contact with someone, really listening to what they're saying. And yes, you and I actually, people who are listening might not know, but we record these on Zoom. So Lucy, you and I are making eye contact, but actually you're not physically in front of me right now. You're miles away. So it is different, and it has a different impact. I think.
But we'll sit across a dinner table or in a pub or anywhere basically and have these sorts of conversations. And
Yes.
I think that has been really helpful in terms of us recording a
Yeah.
podcast, that we do know each other in real life.
Yes, and we do see each other in person on a regular basis. I think that does make a difference. Yeah, absolutely. So there's something really important here about, as leaders, understanding the environment in which we live, the society in which we live, the economy in which we live, is somewhat creating an opportunity for us to not automatically create human connection. And therefore, we as leaders, and actually in this context, every employee is a leader, because everyone has an opportunity to step up and to be the one that creates the push against that default of, I can just work harder if I work from home, I get more done. That's great. Maybe it's true, but actually you need to have that human interaction as well.
Yeah. And when you have the human interaction, that helps oil the wheels to everything happening, which builds know, like, and trust, and helps things to run more smoothly. It's easier to disagree, have conversations when you in a room with someone than when you're over a screen, even though a screen can facilitate a lot of that. And the flexibility of being able to work remotely is wonderful. But it's the intentionality as a leader of knowing that the better your people know each other, and that is facilitated better face to face, then the happier and more productive they are likely to be. Sweeping generalization, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, this isn't a call for everyone to return to the office 5 days a week.
No,
it's about being creating an intentional balance between the different things that are important. And there are various different things that are important, and one of them is having that human connection.
And so that might look like having informal coffees. That might look like getting everyone together every so often in a room. It doesn't look like everyone has to go to the pub after work. It doesn't look like forced fun. I think how that time when people are together face to face are designed becomes even more important than it ever has before, because it has to deliver so much.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really interesting actually is in contrast to AI, where we haven't talked about it a lot, I was having a look through some of our previous episodes before we launched into record this one, and so many of the episodes we've recorded have touched on this human connection as being absolutely critically core to leadership. So we've got difficult conversations, showing vulnerability, speaking up why it matters and how to do it well, trust, not time in the office drives performance, listening, facilitation coaching, like so many of the topics we've talked about, and I'll put links to those in the episode notes. We loop back to this core concept automatically because it's so important for the future of leadership.
I completely agree.
So I wonder whether it's time to move on to our third element here of uncertainty. What do you think?
And we've touched on it a little bit, and I think that the only thing that's certain is that we can't predict the future. There's uncertainty. The end. I mean, that's not all we're going to say on it, but so we cannot predict the future. None of us can. And so therefore, we are operating in a world of uncertainty. There may be more uncertainty now than there was some years ago. Maybe that's because we just have channels where we have way more communication in real time across the globe than we ever have done before. But being able to work in a context that is uncertain deliberately, I think, is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the problem with uncertainty is it feels so uncomfortable. It's kind of so it's the opposite of what we strive for as humans, to know how the story finishes, to complete the next part of the melody. If someone sings half a line of a song, and you just want to complete it because you want the closed loop. You don't want to live. We don't feel naturally comfortable living not knowing what's going to happen next, and it makes it feel really, really difficult sometimes that uncertainty is so prevalent.
And the neuroscience perspective, and there's a book that I can recommend that I will put into the show notes about the neuroscience of organizational change talks very much about how our brains are wired to seek certainty, and if we are feeling uncertain, then that provokes our brain into a threat response. So we're there in fight, flight, freeze. And so the more that we can do to manage our own responses to the uncertain world that we're living in and that of others, that can be helpful. We did an episode about this on leading through change, so that's another one for the show notes. But we don't know what's going to, me and you have slightly different views about AI and what that's going to mean. Who knows if we're right or wrong. We could both be right, we could both be wrong. We don't know. And being able to just sort of sit with that,
I think it's the ability to spot it, and it normally happens the other way around. So even though it's the uncertainty that often causes the discomfort, the first thing we notice is the discomfort, is the feeling of I don't feel comfortable making this decision, or I'm not sure yet, or I'm not ready to make a final decision on this yet. Whenever that discomfort is, it's worth just pausing when you feel it and identifying, okay, where's that coming from? And I would say uncertainty is one of the first things you consider. There may be other things that are causing the discomfort, clearly, but uncertainty is one of the things, and complexity, it's kind of twin, if you like. Reason to think about, why am I feeling so uncomfortable in this decision at the moment?
And there's lots of different reasons as to why that might be. And some of it, and I see this quite a lot, is this feeling that as a leader, I should, hate the word should, know what the best outcome is going to be. And we can only ever make the best decisions that we can at the time based on the information that we know and have. And there's things that we do to get different perspectives and to make a quick decision, but there's no such thing as right or wrong, and that can feel really uncomfortable inside. Kind of, it's a leader. I'm expected to know the right thing to do, and actually that is an unhelpful way of looking at your own leadership, because there isn't a right or a wrong. There's just the decision that you make, in the best decision that you make in the moment.
It is a false expectation of leaders, and it kind of comes from history of kind of the strong man leadership kind of approach. Like we've dispelled most of those myths now. We know that that's not the best way to lead, or at least there are other equally good ways to lead. And yet there's this kind of feeling that people look to the leader for the answers. They look to the leader for certainty. And one of the best things that a leader can do is to just tell the story to people about why there isn't certainty. We have uncertainty. It feels uncomfortable. You can tell safe stories from your past about how you felt that discomfort before. We talked about that in the showing vulnerability episode. Choose what you're willing to share, but tell people, yes, this is uncertain. We don't know. I feel the discomfort, you feel the discomfort. And then it's about figuring out what's the next best step that we can take. It's not about making people feel that there's a certain route forwards because you as the leader have seen more than everyone else has seen. It's not possible. But explaining it and giving people as much certainty as you can, but explaining to people why it exists, why this discomfort exists is a really good first step.
And if you kind of feel that you need to say, this is the best thing to do, this is how we're doing it my way, you're not giving people the opportunity to easily challenge or have a different perspective. And that kind of sets yourself, you kind of get into this kind of perpetuating cycle of knowing the best way, in inverted commas, and not giving people the option to help you and support you who have got a different point of view.
We did an episode on leaders don't need to know all the answers. We've done episodes on facilitation and coaching, which is exactly the same. It's leading others to find answers together. Again, this has been a core part, I think, of what we've been talking about on this podcast. We may not have always used the word uncertainty, and maybe this is a way that you and I, our thinking has developed during the course of doing this podcast. But that feeling of discomfort of not knowing what comes next has actually been part of the journey that we've taken together through these episodes as well. I think it's complexity, making time to think, understanding kind of the role of strategy and where strategy actually can't always guide you to the next step. Sometimes you just have to learn together as a group, what's the one best thing that we can do next that helps us to figure out more as we go along the journey together.
Yeah, I agree.
So one thing we've done in this episode is to link back to quite a lot of our previous thoughts. So we'll make sure we capture all that in the show notes. I've got a feeling the show notes are going to be full of links to other content, to other episodes that we've done this time. Is there anything else on these topics? So AI or technology more broadly, human connection and uncertainty. It feels like we've covered a fair bit today.
I think we've covered a lot. And I think that they're all, all of these topics are interconnected. And if what the starting off point for us was what is the future of leadership? And I think that these three areas are the things that whilst who knows what the future is going to bring, but I encourage leaders to think about what does that look like for me? How can I explore these themes to be the best leader that I can, ready for whatever the uncertain future presents?
And interestingly, it's interesting to note what's not on this list of these three things that we think are really important for future of leadership. It's not get ready to answer every question your team can ever throw at you by over training or spending a lot of time learning the tactical details. That's actually not what's needed. And there must be various other things we're pointing to, that it's not work harder, just work harder. That's not what's needed. It's a whole load of things that are not on this list of things that we have been taught or have learned that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to have the answers. We're supposed to work inordinately long hours. We're supposed to kind of show strength and never show vulnerability. Those are all false. They're all false. So it's worth thinking about what's not on this list, as well as where we are directing you to pay attention to as well.
And any beliefs that you might have around your own leadership that are not on the list. That feels like a coaching conversation.
Well, you know me, I'd always leave back around to a coaching conversation. We can always go deeper. That's my opinion on this. So we have covered a lot of different topics on the Quiet Leadership Revolution. And one of the things that Lucy and I wanted to share this time is that we're going to be taking a bit of a pause to think about what comes next and how we can serve you, our fantastic audience that we love hearing back from. So thank you. Keep the messages coming. We love them. We've covered a lot, haven't we? We've covered a lot of terrain as we've been doing this podcast together.
Yeah, definitely. And if I think about our original list of the topics and then the feedback that we've got from people, and I think this is episode 46, something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And yes, we have talked about lots of topics that overlap in a joyful Venn diagram way, but some of the things that we've explored wouldn't have been on my original list. So it's been a really good learning experience.
I love those come from people that have been listening, as well as from you and I having different points of view and different angles on things as well, which is brilliant. The other thing I think we're going to do is create some playlists. I haven't figured out quite how to do that yet, so we'll put the links to those, but I think some playlists around some of the key themes that we've been talking about in the podcast, so that if you wanted to listen to lots of things we've talked about to do with connection, or lots of things we've talked about to do with facilitation or strategy or something like that, we're going to put together some playlists. So if you've got ideas for playlists you'd like us to create, just let us know, because we can put those together relatively easy as well.
And some of those ideas I think would be helpful. It's like, I'm stuck on this, and it's like, okay, a lot of the episodes will give some ideas about what your first next steps in order to be able to get unstuck. Yeah,
absolutely. Wonderful. Should we do our final wrap up for the moment at least?
Yeah.
Here we go. Thank you for spending this time with us. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist working one-to-one with senior leaders.
And I'm Lucy Gower, a facilitator, trainer and coach, helping leaders develop high-performing teams. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your colleagues and help leverage the impact of the Quiet Leadership Revolution.